Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, May 17th, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we recap a fourth consecutive Orioles loss as the O's fall 6-2 at home against the Yankees in game one of a four-game series. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from an Orioles defeat. Then we'll talk about an Orioles roster move that they made over the weekend, claiming right-handed pitcher Beau Sulser off waivers from the Pirates and sending him down to AAA Norfolk. You may recognize that name because he is the younger brother of former Orioles pitcher Cole Sulser. We'll talk about Beau, what he's done in the minors and the majors so far, and how he could help the Orioles. The corresponding move was the Orioles DFA'd Paul Fry. We'll take a look back at why Fry got to this point after he had had such success early last year and how the tables turned to have him end up designated for assignment and if he could still stick with the Orioles. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So we got a lot to get to here on today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. But before we get to it, just did want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. Locked On Orioles is free and available on all podcast listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Odyssey, wherever you listen. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review on any of those apps if you can. It really, really helps out the pod. And of course, we're right here on YouTube as well. So you can watch this podcast with my great background of a bunch of Orioles knickknacks and collectibles and whatnot. And make sure to like and comment on the videos. Hit that red subscribe button here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page so I can continue what I've been doing here on the Locked On Orioles page. We continue to see growth here on this page pretty much every week now since the season has started, and that is all thanks to you, the listener. So thanks again for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. And for your first listen today, we start with another Orioles loss. They've lost 4 in a row now as they fall 6-2 to the New York Yankees in game one of a 4-game series. Orioles now 14-22 through 36 games of this 2022 season. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' 6-2 loss to the Yankees at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. And the first thing you need to know is that Kyle Bradish certainly wasn't at his best. We saw his best in St. Louis last week with the 11 strikeouts. But he wasn't as bad as his line may have showed. It was really an in-between start for Kyle Bradish. In his 4th career Major League start, he goes 4 1/3 against this Yankee lineup, first time facing them in the regular season, allowing 4 runs on 8 hits. He struck out 6, he walked 3, he allowed a home run, threw 84 pitches, 48 for strikes, just 4 hard hit balls against Bradish, and now has a 5.06 ERA through 4 Major League starts. And it was a really interesting day for Bradish because obviously the big blow in this game came in the 4th inning. A 3-run home run hit by Jose Trevino, his first home run of the year for the Yankee backup catcher, made it a 4-0 New York lead at the time. And, it was a ball that was, a pitch way up and out of the zone, a fastball that was certainly would have been called a ball had Trevino taken it. He just kind of skies it down the right field line. It looks like it's going to go foul, but it ends up hitting the foul pole down the right field line. I mean, the ball had an expected batting average of 110. This was not exactly a demolished 3-run home run by Trevino. He certainly didn't get all of it. It wasn't even a hard hit ball. Only 93.8 miles per hour off the bat, traveled only 349 feet, and again, a 110 expected batting average. So a bit of bad luck there from Bradish, but, his command issues early in the game did allow 2 runners to be on in that situation, and Trevino came through. Of course, the other run he gave up was, an RBI double from Giancarlo Stanton, the third. That ball was smoked off the wall, and Stanton certainly deserved the RBI on that one. He hit that ball hard, and I mean hard, 114.2 miles an hour off the bat for that Stanton RBI double. That thing was smoked, as Giancarlo Stanton usually does. But overall for Bradish, he struck out 6 And, the slider played up once again. He had 8 whiffs in his 84 pitches, 5 of those whiffs on the slider, 3 on the fastball. Fastball average was right around what it's been this year, 94.4, maxed out a couple times at 96 with the fastball. But, the command was solid with the fastball, just wasn't there with the rest of his pitches. Again, he was, fastball heavy, 50% fastballs, 32% sliders, and then he threw just 9 changeups and 6 curveballs on the night. Really didn't go to those pitches. Those pitches really didn't even play a factor much of the game at all. He again was heavily fastball slider, as we've really seen for Bradish through his first 4 starts now. And again, the slider looked really good. Got the 5 whiffs, got some strikeouts with that pitch. Was able to tightrope out of a really weird first inning where he walked 2, gave up an infield single, but also struck out the side and got Joey Gallo looking on a slider, 3-2, 2 outs with the bases loaded to put up a 0 in the first inning. Now, he did throw 30 pitches in the first, and that's kind of what got him off to a rough start, but did get out of there with a 0. Just a really weird start. I don't know how much I want to take away from this. I think my big takeaway will be that the command wasn't great, but the slider was good. And we'll kind of go along with that. And probably looks like we'll see Bradish Saturday against the Rays and see if he can improve on that command in his 5th Major League start. Second thing you need to know from this one is, let's stick with the pitching. Keegan Akin was fantastic again, and he continues to get better and better pitching out of this Oriole bullpen. His longest appearance of the year, he goes 3 2/3 scoreless innings out of the Oriole bullpen, allowing just 1 hit, strikes out 3, and walks 1, through 58 pitches in relief, only 3 hard hit balls against him, lowers his season ERA to 1.46 for the lefty, who had an ERA north of 6 in 2021 as both a starter and a reliever. And it just keeps working for Keegan Akin, going against a right-handed heavy, really good Yankees lineup. And he just rolled right through them. I mean, it wasn't crazy dominant. 6 whiffs on 26 Yankee swings, 2 on the fastball, 3 on the changeup, 1 on the slider. But it was interesting. He didn't even throw the curveball in this outing. 25 fastballs, 19 changeups, 14 sliders for Akin. And we saw a lot of changeups because he saw a lot of right-handed hitters. The changeup looked really good. The fastball was in the zone. It was, right 93 to 95, as we've seen most of the season. He was throwing strikes. He was getting that high spin rate. He was throwing it up in the zone. It's working for Keegan Akin. And he's getting righties out. It's not just, a lefty-lefty thing. He's getting everybody in the lineup out. You got to do that to throw 3 2/3 scoreless out of the bullpen. I'd love to see him continue to do this. He just continues to impress out of the pen. And, I did question myself a little bit watching Akin tonight, like, at what point, if this keeps working, do the O's try to transition him back into the rotation? But with all the options the O's have in the rotation and, still hoping to get Dean Kramer back soon and obviously hoping to see Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall in the majors pretty soon, this is working. This kind of, piggyback bridge guy role, I say just keep Keegan Akin right where he is and keep him rolling out of the pen because I broke down in a previous episode a couple weeks ago how he's doing it. It's still kind of shocking to me that he's doing it this well, but Akin continues to be a really, really solid and reliable weapon in long relief out of the Orioles bullpen. Third thing you need to know is the third and final pitcher that the Orioles used in this game. Felix Bautista probably had his worst appearance at the major league level so far. He pitched the top of the 9th inning for the Orioles, allowed back-to-back solo home runs to Josh Donaldson and Anthony Rizzo. The 2 runs on 2 hits, had a strikeout and a walk. First multi-home run game that he's allowed through 20 pitches. And, he did finish it strong, was able to strike out Joey Gallo with 3 nasty split changeups. Gallo swinging through all 3 of them for Bautista's 1 strikeout that did end that 9th inning. But just, a fastball, it kind of was up and out of the zone to Josh Donaldson, but he made a good piece of hitting. And then, it did groove a pitch to Anthony Rizzo, not his best changeup that he hit out, or splitter, I should say, but did end up with 4 whiffs on the splitter. This is just, kind of a bad day for Felix. He did throw 1 pitch, 100.5 miles per hour, fastball average 99. I mean, the stuff was still what the stuff has been all year. He just, made a couple of mistakes, and I don't think this is any reason to really worry a lot about Bautista. But the one thing I would be worrying about is the Oriole offense, because the fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles 6-2 loss to the Yankees on Monday night is that This offense, with the pieces they're missing right now, with Ryan Mountcastle, Austin Hayes, and Jorge Mateo all out with injury, three of the Orioles' best hitters right now, this offense is inept. Just 2 runs on 3 hits in this loss after scoring just 3 runs in the entire series over the weekend when they were swept on the road by the Tigers. They just continue to struggle offensively. I mean, you get Mullins and Mancini combining for an 0 for 7 at the top of the order. You have the bottom 4 hitters in the order combining to go 0 for 11 in this game with 7 strikeouts. That was Tyler Nevin, Ryan McKenna, Robinson Chirinos, and Rylan Bannon. It was not fun to watch. Orioles got only 3 hits. Again, it was a Rougned Odor single who had a 1 for 2 or a 1 for 4, and then we'll get to those 2 other hits in just a second. They worked only 2 walks. Arias and Mancini each had 1, but I mean, the Orioles struck out a whole lot. They struck out 11 times in this game, including Odor striking out to end the game against Aroldis Chapman. They need these guys back. And again, Mountcastle is still on the injured list, but Austin Hayes and Jorge Mateo are not on the IL. They just, Brandon Hyde talked about, he said Hayes was potentially available to pinch hit Monday night. Mateo was not available. But Hyde did say he hopes to get both back in the lineup here on Tuesday against the Yankees. The healing is continuing on Hayes' hand, and Mateo's still sore from that collision with Spencer Torkelson on Sunday. But we will see. Hopefully, they're both back in the lineup. I would bet that Austin Hayes is probably in the lineup. I think it's a little more questionable for Mateo. We may not see him until Wednesday. But the Orioles need these 3 guys back because, man, the offense without him, it is looking rough. But there was one bright spot in the order, and that's the 5th and final thing you need to know from this Oriole loss. Anthony Santander had a 2-homer day, and nobody else really did anything. He had 2 of the Orioles' 3 hits, but he had 2 solo home runs, and he also hit a home run in the Friday game against Detroit, and he hit the ball pretty hard in this one. Not only did the Orioles only have 3 hits, all 3 of those hits were the only 3 hard hit balls the Orioles had in this game. I mean, it was pretty sad. But Santander with 2 solo homers. First, he hits one in the 4th inning to get the Orioles on the board, leading off the 4th against Yankee starter Luis Severino, who pitched 6 really strong innings in this one. But that one was hitting left-handed and just roped one out towards right field on a breaking ball that was below the knees. And shout out to Zach Silver of MLB.com, who tweeted out that was the lowest pitch that any Orioles hit a home run on since StatCast started tracking it back in 2008. I mean, this was a breaking ball from Severino, a slider that was almost in the dirt. It was at Santander's ankles. It was clearly a ball, but he went after it and basically just golfed that thing into right field for a home run. It was a pretty impressive piece of hitting, 102 miles per hour off the bat, 378 feet. And, it wasn't a cheapie, 810 expected batting average, just golfed that thing out of there. And then in the 9th inning, equally as impressive, he turned around to the right side, was hitting against Aroldis Chapman in a 6-1 game with 1 out, and just smokes one down the line over the big wall, 105 mile per hour off the bat, 388 feet, a 950 expected batting average on the right-handed home run. Just the 3rd Oriole with a multi-home run game this year. Mountcastle and Hayes each have 1 as well. And he is the first Oriole to homer from each side of the plate in one single game since he did it, since Santander did it against the Royals back in September of 2019. But, we were probably hoping that a different Oriole hitter would be homering from both sides of the plate on Monday nights, but we didn't see Adley on Monday. Just look out. All I'll say is what I'm hearing. Just look out for maybe a potential Friday debut. As I predicted a couple weeks ago on the podcast, look out for a potential Friday debut for Adley Rutschman. But O's didn't have him. Offense was bad, and they lose to the Yankees 6-2 in game 1 of the series. But the Orioles, it's been a little bit of a rough stretch. 4 losses in a row now, dropping to 14-22 after they had been 3-0-1 in their previous 4 series before this little cold stretch. But it wasn't just, losing over the weekend. They did make a couple of roster moves, including one that we're going to get to here coming up, as the O's claimed right-handed pitcher Beau Sulser off waivers from the Pirates. So we're going to talk about Sulser's career so far in the minors and the majors from Pittsburgh and what he could bring to the Oriole bullpen if he does get that call to the big leagues. But first, let's talk about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar out there on the market. 17 grams of protein in every delicious Built Bar, but you almost forget that it's so good for you. Barely over 200 calories, barely any sugar or carbs, but they taste so good. You feel like you're eating a candy bar. All the bars covered in 100% real chocolate. Great flavors like white chocolate chunk, peanut butter brownie. They've got fruit flavors as well. They've got mint chocolate, so many different flavors. And they just keep getting it done. Built Bar is always coming up with new flavors as well that you can check out and order for yourself. I mean, it really doesn't get better than that. You get a healthy snack to provide you energy throughout your day, but you feel like you're eating a candy bar, and it's a delicious treat for you to have. And, I eat a good amount of Built Bars. It's a great snack to have and is really the best of both worlds. So if you want to get your hands on some Built Bars, head over to Built.com. And if you use the promo code LOCKED15, you'll get 15% off your order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. So the Orioles fall to the Yankees 6-2 on Monday night. But turning our attention to more of a roster move scenario and down to AAA, there is a new player for the Norfolk Tides, and that is Beau Sulser, the right-handed pitcher who the Orioles claimed off waivers from the Pittsburgh Pirates over the weekend and immediately sent him down to AAA Norfolk. Now, to clear room on the 40-man roster, the Orioles DFA'd lefty Paul Fry, and we'll get to that part of the move in just a second. But first, let's talk about Beau Sulser and learn about the newest Oriole, who, yes, will start in AAA Norfolk, but I can almost guarantee you we're going to see him at some point pitching in an Oriole uniform. But who is Beau Sulser? Well, let's get the obvious part out in front. He is the younger brother of Cole Sulser, who, of course, pitched for the Orioles since 2020, and then a week before opening day was traded to the Miami Marlins along with Tanner Scott earlier this year and is now pitching okay out of the Marlins bullpen. But Beau is Cole's younger brother, a couple years younger, a 28-year-old, 6'2" right-handed pitcher who made his MLB debut this season on April 26th with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was a Pirates draft pick, a 10th rounder selected by the Pirates back in 2017 out of Dartmouth, which is also where Cole Sulser pitched. They were teammates at Dartmouth there for a couple of years, both in the same pitching rotation up in the Ivy League. But he just kind of rolled his way through the Pirates system and got himself to the big leagues in late April this year. He made 4 appearances out of the Pirates bullpen before he was DFA'd. In those 4 appearances, he had a 3.72 ERA. In 9 2/3 innings out of the bullpen, he allowed 9 runs, but only 4 of those runs were earned on 8 hits, struck out 10, walked 6, allowed a homer, and hit 1 batter in that stretch. Now, Sulser had an interesting stretch to the season where in his first 3 appearances, he went 5 2/3 innings, allowing 5 runs, but all of them were unearned on 4 hits. So he had a 0 ERA through his first 3 appearances. He did strike out 6 and walk 5, which is not great in 5 2/3 innings. But despite all the runs, his defense wasn't helping him. Then things got a little out of hand, and kind of an interesting appearance was ended up being his last for the Pirates. His last appearance was May 10th against the Dodgers. He pitched in long relief in that game, ended up throwing 4 innings against the Dodgers, allowing 4 runs on 4 hits, 4 Ks, a walk, and a 2-run homer that he allowed to Edwin Rios in that game. But he was kind of just put in mop-up duty, and then it felt like the Pirates kind of knew that they were going to DFA him, so they just let him go as long as he could in a blowout game. Pirates were down 7-0 when he entered, gave up 4 runs over 4 innings, and then was designated for assignment. And the Orioles took advantage with putting in the claim on Sulser. So things were a little better early. And hey, he did give some length as well. And it's something he can do. And it is interesting because he has given length in his minor league career. He hasn't, just been a reliever even lately. This year in AAA, before he got the call up to the big leagues, he was a starter in the Indianapolis rotation at AAA for the Pirates. Made 3 starts and had a 2.13 ERA in 12 2/3 innings at AAA this year. 3 earned runs allowed on 11 hits, 14 Ks to just 2 walks and 1 home run allowed. So the stuff was really working as a starter in AAA. And, those 3 starts, he was, not pitching crazy deep into games, but was averaging about 4 innings per start, and it was giving some length. So, it's something he can do as well. He's not just, a 1-inning guy, max 2 like his brother. He can, stretch it out just a little bit more. But, in the minors in his career, he made 116 appearances, 39 starts. So he has that starting acumen, but has been more of a reliever. 329 innings, a 4.04 ERA in the minors, about 8 Ks per nine, and about 3 walks per nine in that time. But in terms of the stuff, he's a 4-pitch guy, but he's really a 3-pitch guy. It's sinker, changeup, and cutter with an occasional curveball. The sinker is the pitch that you'll see the most from Beau Sulser. Throws it about 38% of the time, about a 92 to 93 mile per hour pitch. That really is just kind of his strike pitch, his get ahead pitch, and his really try to get a ground ball pitch is what he does with that sinker. But kind of the equalizer at times is that changeup. And surprise, surprise, of course, the equalizer for Cole Sulser is the changeup. Has one of the best right-handed changeups in all of baseball. And the changeup is the number 2 pitch for Beau Sulser. Threw it about 32% of the time. That's about an 83 mile per hour pitch. So about a 10 mile per hour difference between fastball and change, a 25% whiff rate. And it's interesting. It's got a pretty similar shape to that changeup as Cole Sulser's changeup, kind of that, almost split change that dives down and a little bit down and away from left-handers, but mostly just a straight dive down. And you throws it to righties and lefties and gets swings and misses on that pitch to both guys. And then the third pitch is interesting. The third pitch is a cutter. He's a sinker, cutter, changeup guy. It's an interesting repertoire, one you don't see a whole lot. About 23% of the time he throws that cutter, 87 to 88 miles per hour. So it takes a little bit off the fastball with some cutting action. Did have a 28% whiff rate in the big leagues this year. His one home run he allowed did come to lefty Edwin Rios on that cutter, but he really likes to jam that cutter inside to left-handed batters. He throws it more to lefties than righties, likes to jam them inside, try and get soft ground balls or pop-ups. And that's kind of that pitch that he will throw along with that changeup to left-handed hitters. And then there's a curveball. He's thrown it about 6% of the time in the big leagues. Hasn't used it much. Again, he's thrown 9 curveballs on the year in 9 2/3 innings. It's a 79 mile per hour curveball. He's basically only thrown it to right-handers. Hasn't thrown it to lefties this year. So it's a pitch he'll try to drop in there. But really, it's a sinker, changeup, cutter guy. And the changeup does look a lot like Cole. So it's really interesting to see what he will do for the Orioles. Now, the windup is a little different than Cole Sulser. He kind of comes with his hands much lower to start and his body a little lower as well, and then kind of raises himself up. But the end of his delivery does look like Cole's, and the changeup definitely looks like Cole's as well. But again, is the younger brother, and did have some kind of underlying stat success this year in those 4 appearances with the Pirates. Just a 180 expected batting average against him, so he got a little unlucky at times this year. Only 2 barrels allowed, and all in all, things were at least a little nice for Sulser. He did wear number 69 for the Pirates when making his debut back on April 26th. But in terms of when we could see him again, immediately optioned to AAA Norfolk. He'll most likely pitch out of the Tide's bullpen. And if the Orioles need a righty soon, maybe we could see him. There's other options, obviously, in Norfolk that are pitching well. Cole Uvala is one of the guys who comes to mind, but just gives the Orioles another option on the 40-man roster with major league experience. And, Cole can help him out with kind of the best things to do in Baltimore. And will probably be easier for him to get acclimated to the Orioles system, knowing his brother pitched there for the last couple of seasons. But, of course, with the Orioles claiming Beau Sulser off waivers from the Pirates, they had a full 40-man roster, so they had to make a move. And that move was Paul Fry, who has really struggled since just about July of 2021. The Orioles designated Paul Fry for assignment to make room for Beau Sulser. And coming up, we'll talk about why it was time to DFA Paul Fry and what his future looks like, either with the Orioles or in Major League Baseball in general. But first, we got to talk about rockauto.com because I know many of you may be getting in your cars this weekend and heading to Camden Yards. I know a lot of you did it on Monday night. I know many, kind of thought that would be the Adley debut. It didn't work out that way, but definitely take a look at getting to the ballpark this weekend, potentially for Adley to make potentially his debut at Camden Yards against the Rays. But if you ever need a part for your car, something goes wrong, you need to replace it, head to rockauto.com because they're not like the chain dealerships, the auto parts stores that try to big time you and tell you how much they know about cars and get you confused and maybe don't have the part you need. RockAuto.com has any part you could need for your car or truck. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and the website is so easy, even for me. For someone who knows nothing about cars, I can go to rockauto.com and get the part I need for my car, and I can be on my way. And of course, the best part is they've got the best prices as well. The lowest prices you'll find are at rockauto.com. So head over to rockauto.com to get any part you need for your car or truck, and make sure to write Locked On Orioles in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. So the Orioles pick up a new right-hander in Beau Sulser, option him to AAA after grabbing him off waivers from the Pirates. But to make room for him on the 40-man roster, the Orioles DFA'd the left-hander Paul Fry, who has been in the Orioles bullpen since 2018 when they acquired him from the Seattle Mariners. He has only pitched for the Orioles in the big leagues, was in the minors with the Mariners, then came over to the Orioles. And I can't say I was surprised when I saw the move was Paul Fry. It's something that had been in the works. I thought the O's might give him a little longer leash this year, but again, not the most surprising move in the world for the Orioles to make. Again, Paul Fry, 29-year-old left-hander, about to be 30 in July, and as I said, has been with the O's since 2018, and it was kind of up and down this year out of the Oriole bullpen. Of course, he made the opening day roster after he finished last year and spent the final month of 2021 in AAA after just being a disaster in the second half of last year. But this year he looked a little better, at least, than the second half of last year. Got the walk rate down, was throwing more strikes, but made 12 appearances this year for the Orioles. In 12 innings, had a 6.00 ERA, 9 hits, 9 runs, 8 earned allowed in 12 innings. Struck out 12, walked 7, allowed 1 home run, and hit 2 batters in his 12 innings of work out of the Oriole bullpen. Now, the one thing that made it a little interesting, and you could question a little the timing on DFAing Paul Fry, is that he did have 5 consecutive scoreless appearances before the DFA. He had thrown 5 scoreless innings over his 5 appearances in May, had allowed only 2 hits, had struck out 4, and had only walked 1 batter in those 5 appearances. So in that sense, you're thinking, why is this the time you DFA Paul Fry and not April when he had 3 appearances when he allowed 2 or more runs in just an inning out of the Oriole bullpen? Well, the thing about it is, despite the weird 2021 that Fry had, where, the first couple months of the season, he was dominant, didn't give up an extra base hit until June, was getting everybody out. And yeah, things started to slump a little bit, but, you split his season into halves, a 4.09 ERA in 33 innings in the first half last year, a 10.67 ERA in 14 innings in the second half for Paul Fry last year, and then was optioned and spent the last month of the year basically not pitching on the AAA Norfolk roster. But, you're asking, well, if he had 5 straight scoreless appearances, he was turning things around. Why DFA him? Well, when you look a little closer at the numbers, even though the results were getting better, the stuff was actually getting worse. And he was throwing more strikes. The walks were not an issue. Again, those 5 innings in May, just 1 walk, but only 4 strikeouts, and the stuff was getting worse. He had a 53.1 hard hit percentage this year. He was around the high 30s in total last year. And again, it was much worse in the second half, but he was getting scorched. Average exit velo, 94.6 miles an hour against Paul Fry. Remember, 95 is a hard hit ball. He was basically averaging giving up a hard hit ball every time someone put it in play. He was in the mid-80s on average exit velo last year. Guys are squaring him up a lot more this year. One of the big reasons, the slider has just been terrible. The slider, even when he lost control last year in the second half, he could still go to that slider. He had basically 0 fastball command whatsoever. And, I had the potential theory that many have talked about as well, that he may have been a sticky stuff guy. They made that sticky stuff enforcement right around when Fry's season kind of turned on its head last year. And maybe thought he was a sticky stuff guy who just couldn't find that grip after they made the change and thought he might need an off season to figure it out. Well, he did figure out a better grip, and he can throw his fastball for a strike once again. His fastball has actually been much better this year than it was last year. But the slider has been the out pitch. It's been the whiff pitch. He can throw it for a strike, get a swing and miss by righties and lefties. He's always been a guy who can get righties out just as much as he can lefties. Was actually a reverse splits lefty early in his career. That slider has just evaded him this year. A 524 slugging percentage against his slider Guy's only slugged 277 against his slider in 2021. Hasn't thrown it for as many strikes. When he does, he's hanging it right down the middle. And he's just kind of lost that pitch. And when he's just a fastball guy who's throwing more changeups this year, he's not effective. He needs that slider. And when he throws that slider, it's getting clobbered. When that was his best pitch, that's almost more concerning than last year when he couldn't throw a strike. And I think that's why this was the time to DFA Paul Fry. Now, you look in the Oriole bullpen, Cionel Perez is in there as a lefty. We haven't seen him really in a while. He's been a little shaky lately, but still has only given up 1 earned run on the year. And then, of course, you have Keegan Akin, who's dominated. And then you have Logan Allen, who we saw pitch a couple of times in Detroit and was just kind of meh. I don't think he'll be around for very long in terms of Oriole lefties in this bullpen right now. So without Paul Fry, you would think the O's would go for another lefty. And, well, there's an easy choice there. I mean, Nick Vespi, who, the Orioles didn't put on the 40-man, he was most certainly going to be lost in the Rule 5 draft this offseason, but the Rule 5 draft was canceled. So Vespi stays in the system. Of course, a former podcast guest that we had on over the offseason. His stats at AAA Norfolk so far this year, if you haven't been paying attention, pay attention. Vespi out of the Tides bullpen this year, 14 1/3 innings, no runs allowed. He's got a 0 ERA, no earned runs on 6 hits, 21 strikeouts to just 3 walks in those 14 1/3 innings. It is time to call Nick Vespi up right now. He's ready to go in the bigs. I want to see him pitch to big league hitters. That slider's ridiculous. He's better than Paul Fry. Paul Fry's gone. It's got to be Nick Vespi time soon in the big leagues for the Orioles. And hopefully it's Adley Rutschman time soon as well. But just keep your eye on Friday night. But that'll do it for today's episode. We'll be back with you here on the podcast tomorrow, recapping game 2 of the 4-game set between the Orioles and the Yankees, and also keeping you up with all your Orioles news, hoping maybe we hear something about Adley Rutschman that we can talk about on the pod tomorrow as well. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.